Thank you for coming back for more Whole Wellness with Ann. This is video number 6 in a little series I'm doing on the boys in my life. And I just want to start by saying I'm married, happily married for going on 26 years. And one of the boys I talk frequently about in this series is my now husband. So what this series is about and how it came about is because I wanted to do a stories that is very forthright and transparent about the impact of an absent father in a young girl's life and the issues and challenges that she may face as she reaches puberty and goes through adolescence, whether she has a dad physically present in her life or not. Sometimes and often professionals will refer to daddyless, even if there is a father present in the home physically, but he is emotionally disconnected and does not have an intimate connection with his children. And that was by all means my circumstances growing up. And my dad was a business owner, and he didn't hire his first employee till I was about 12, I think I was, and the purpose of hiring this employee was so that my dad could take some time off, and he did never take time off. This employee was hired as his manager, and he took us on one family vacation throughout the rest of my teen years. So there was one vacation that my family took, and that was when I was about the age of 12. If you remember the story about my sunglasses from the abuse series, a horrible memory associated with that vacation. Very scarring for me as a child, and also a developing young woman who very much desired her dad's attention and affection and approval and to be worthy of his love, which is where the boys come in the numerous relationships and struggles that I have had with boys. And right before this series, I did upload a video to my channel about weighing the pros and cons of being raised without a father, i.e. Incarceration, death, divorce, where the dad is not involved or in the picture at all, versus a present father who's abusive. And I personally was raised in a home with a physically present father who was emotionally and mentally absent and checked out from his relationship with his kids, especially me. And I say especially me because I was the scapegoat of the family. There were very high expectations for me, and I just failed and disappointed in every way. But of course, my perspective is, I'm sure, significantly different from those who did not have one or both of their parents in the picture. And I have a very dear cousin of mine who lost her dad to cancer I believe she was 11 years old or 10 years old when she lost her dad. And she always wished that she had my dad because she looked to him as a very masculine person, and that was lacking in her adolescence. But she doesn't know all of the abuse that I suffered. I've never talked to her about what happened in my childhood and all of the mental problems that I have as a result of both my abusive dad and my abusive and mentally unstable mother. Both of my parents have individual traumatic backgrounds, the extent of which I don't have a lot of detail on, but I covered all that in the series I did a couple of months ago on abuse. And that series was from the perspective of me growing up in a toxic family system without any awareness of what was going on or why it was going on, and the confusion and the stress and the chaos and the fear that I had growing up. And I am almost 50 years old. This is my golden birthday year. I turned 50 this year in 2023, and I am super stoked about the fact that the last couple of years have been tremendously healing for me, and I'm on this journey towards wellness for the rest of my life. I've turned the page in the book on Ann. So this series, we left off in video number 5 with me being a junior in high school, and my high school years were a very transitional time for me. I had gone from being who I really was born to be, this shy, sweet, super empathetic, friendly, gentle girl into this high school age of, fear and panic and chaos and confusion and stress and wondering what I was doing wrong, and because everybody else seemed to have siblings and parents that cared and interact with them and treated them decently, and friends and smiles on their faces, and I was just like lost. And that is because I had no identity. I was being told every time I tried to do me and be me, I was told I was wrong. I was told that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't aggressive enough, that I wasn't a strong enough leader, that I needed to lead the pack and tell people how it's going to be. And there was just a very clear instruction for me since about the age of 8 or 9, when things started to change in my family and the dynamic really took a turn for the worse, where basically my parents figured out who I was, and my mom took full advantage of that, and my dad was disgusted by it. And then over the course of the subsequent years, my young teens, my mom eventually got disgusted with it, and my dad became to be impressed by it. Now, he was very careful not to give me too many props. So as my high school years advanced, I did more activities and I became more and more like who he wanted me to be in order to get that return of worthy love, to feel like I was worth something and to feel good about myself. And throughout these years, I was reaching for any male affection and attention that I could possibly get. I wasn't doing the instigation in quite a bit of circumstances, but I was standing on the outskirts, letting things happen to me, letting things come to me, letting people get too close to me. Way too many people get way too close to me too quickly without knowing the slightest thing about who they were as a person or what the mutual relationship was. I was just like, ooh, attention, I'll take it, and I was on board and in love for a week or 2 weeks at a time, cyclically throughout my high school career. So I also simultaneously, about my sophomore year, I got my first real paying job, full-time job, in a very popular historic gift shop in my hometown, where I was dealing with the public. And I was very scared of doing that at first, but it very quickly suited me because I was good with numbers naturally, and I loved all the knickknacks and the collectibles and the stuff that I sold. And I liked talking to the public because they liked talking to me. And so I was sold hook, line, and sinker from very young in this retail world where I had this fake popularity because I could sell, because I could talk to people. And the reason I could talk to people, which was learned and trained in me, is because they liked talking to me. They seemed interested in what I had to offer for sale. So when they asked questions and I answered their questions, they were impressed with me. They really thought that I was knowledgeable, and I was just regurgitating facts, you know what I mean? But it fit the scenario, the dialogue of my life at that time. It allowed me to work double time on impressing my dad. And by the time I was a junior, the summer between my junior and senior year, I was impressing the heck out of my dad because I was selling very expensive collectibles for hundreds of dollars. And I would come home and tell him all about it, and he'd give me a smile and ask for the story and all the details and how much money I made and all this other stuff. And he was just taking notes, because the following year, he asked me to come work for him part-time. He actually tried to get me to work for him full-time, but I couldn't stand his manager. His manager was a complete fake. This guy was and is an absolute jerk. He would just cheese to my dad when he was around, and the minute my dad turned his back, he was like this, snarling at me and my siblings and treating my mom like dirt and just being a royal jackass. So I was very hesitant to go work for my dad. And plus there was always that hesitancy in the back of my mind, not wanting to work for him because he was a royal jerk. You know, I had seen him take advantage of my brothers already, working for him, making them work for him, and they didn't have a say in the matter. They always had to do what he told them to do, working for him. They never had a choice. They never were asked what their desire was or what their outcome would, would they like to take over the business someday, or did they even like what they did, or would they like to do something different, or, what their hours would be. Nothing like that. It was always commanded to us. It was a dictatorship growing up. So by the time I did finally agree to work part-time for my dad, it was literally a decision I made just to get my dad's approval and attention, because I was starved for it by the time I was a senior in high school, and I was lapping up all the attention he gave me when I joined the track team in junior year, and I was going to prom and had a big circle of friends and had all these things, status, clout, reputation, title as a upperclassman, the most you can have as a teen high schooler, that was what my dad valued. He didn't even know me. He knew that I wanted to be an artist, but that was shot down in my sophomore year, I believe sophomore into junior year. Very early on, I was told art is a hobby. Art's not a career. So I was deflated quickly and worked very hard to rebound and get anything from my dad: affection, attention, approval, acceptance, love, worthiness. I was striving to be worthy of my dad. And the relationship with the boys were no different. My relationship with boys were dramatic, ridiculous, imagined, a lot of the times existed because I put the effort in and there was no effort from the boys, and so on. Like, I had no clue. Not only didn't I have an identity, I also didn't know how to interact with or relate with people. And this was a problem in my friendships as well, but the thing with the boys is it's important for parents as well as women and young women to listen to what we're talking about in this series, and either take it to heart for themselves to improve their own relationships with their significant others or their own children. Don't settle for second best. Know your worth, regardless of what your dad was able to provide to you and prove to you and give to you. Know your worth. And that's all part of healing. But this series is to demonstrate the long line and the string of boys and hurt and stress and heartbreak that I experienced over and over and over again as a teenager. So when I was moving from junior year into senior year, I was on top of the world. I was getting all kinds of attention from my dad and interest in my job. And the more friends I made, the more interested he was in what I was going to be doing in school and what my grades were and what college I was going to go to and my future. He all of a sudden believed in me, whereas he never did before. But because I fit the mold of what he thought I should be, all of a sudden he was interested. And so things my senior year were just an absolute joke, because I joined every activity I could possibly think of, including track, which I even hated. I mentioned that in video number 5, because I joined track my junior year in high school, which wasn't really even a sport, honestly. Not for me, it wasn't. There was no exercise involved, but I hated exercise when I was young, so it was like a win-win for me. I got the attention and the approval and acceptance from my dad, and I didn't have to work too hard at it. I think that's why I stuck with track in my senior year. But I still very much had a crush on Ben throughout high school. But he was a really good looking boy, and that's about it. I knew nothing about him. His family lived across the street from us. They moved in the summer between my 8th grade year of junior high and my 9th grade of high school. You can go back and watch the prior couple of videos to get all the information about the prior boys. Chad, I was madly in love with him, but he was a year older than me. So by the time I got to be a senior in high school, he was gone and out of the picture, and I never saw him. I knew he worked at the library, the public library in town, in the hometown where we grew up. But I was going there periodically just to see him, just to run into him, just to have some sort of interaction and say hi to him. But it was always just a hi or hello, how you doing? There was never any conversation. I had been in love with him all throughout high school. And by the time I was a senior, I was sick and tired of that relationship or that crush not advancing anywhere. And I had changed enough into what my dad wanted me to be to get brave and ask Chad to homecoming. So I did that. He at first told me he would think about it, which was extremely humiliating to me. And then eventually he agreed to it. And I was super proud because for homecoming, my art club that I was president of won first place in the homecoming parade. And there were many floats, and the classes, the freshman class, the sophomore class, junior class, and senior class all had really great floats. And it was very odd for a club from this high school to win the float competition. So me being president of the art club and us placing first in the float competition for the homecoming parade was a huge pat on my back and a huge boost to my ego. That ego that my dad taught me that I should have in order to succeed at life. And that senior homecoming, I had asked Chad to go. And when we went to the dance, it was a really good time. We laughed. We enjoyed each other. I was not grossed out with him at all when we slow danced. He couldn't dance at all. But I really didn't care because I liked being close. Unlike Scott, my junior year of when we went to prom, and I was really grossed out by being close to him, Chad I felt very connected to and very romantic towards. And at the end of the night, we said to each other when he dropped me off at my house that we had a really good time, and I believed that we did. But he said, I said, well, we should probably get together again then, since we had such a good time, it would be nice to go out. And he was like, yeah, I'll give you a call. Let's do it again, and he never called me. He never called me. And that broke my heart. It took me months to get over him. And I cried a lot. And my dad had it up to here, and he was sick of it, even though he never sat me down and had that conversation with me about how beautiful I was and how much I had to offer a worthy boy and how much I should treasure and value myself and give of myself only to boys that are worthy of me and tell me all the qualities I had. No, he said, oh my gosh, he's not interested in you. It's kind of like he did that whole book and movie. He's just not that into you, so get over it, and he was angry. He was frustrated. He just wanted me to get my thick head out of the clouds, and I felt his disgust and his disdain for me at that young age. And it took me a while, but I eventually got focused on college and got to the point where I was able, with that nice ego that I had built up, to say, screw Chad. I'm going to go off to college and I'm going to be popular and I'm going to have a boyfriend. I'm going to meet tons of people and screw him. That was my mindset, just like I had been raised to have. You're not going to get me down. I'm going to get you down first. Hide those feelings, because feelings are ew, according to my dad, and narcissistic people. And the rest of my senior year was pretty much spent being friends and developing friendships with a boy named Christian and a boy named Dean, who was just my friend. And I had no awareness whatsoever of Dean's crush on me as seniors in high school until graduation, when he bought me perfume for graduation, which was super sweet and super generous and super thoughtful. And my mom told me, or had to tell me, wake up, stupid, that boy has a crush on you. And I was like, oh. And I had thought back to our senior year and went, oh, he offered me a ride a couple of times for art club meetings, because we were in art club together and other things. But my eyes the entire time, and Dean was a nice boy, he probably could have been a boyfriend, but my eyes were fixed on Christian, this other friend of mine who was in my art club and gave me rides everywhere and wrote me poems and hung out with me and bought pizza, and we were in choir together, and he just flirted with me quite a bit and flattered me, and I thought he and I were going to probably have a relationship. But that winter of my senior year, going over to Christian's house one time, and it got to be pretty late. It was like for teenagers, it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I believe my curfew was like 10 o'clock at that time. And I said to Christian, you got to take me home now. And it was a winter night, but the roads were dry. It was a clear sky, dry, calm winter evening. And he lived out in the middle of nowhere. So we got in his car and we left his house and we got out to where there were no street lights or houses or anything like that. And he pulls over to the side of the road and I thought, here it comes. Here it comes. It was very romantic because the stars were just lighting up the sky, but it was pitch black and it was just beautiful and quiet. We were listening to Christmas music. So it must have been around Christmas time when this happened. And I was singing along with the Christmas music, and it was a carol that I was kind of singing high pitched, Angels We Have Heard on High or something like that. And Christian pulled over and he said to me, I've got to tell you something. And I was like, oh boy, here it comes. And I remember myself getting worked up, so my heart starting to thump and starting to feel warm. And he turned in the car to face me and I turned to face him, and he said, firstly, you sing like an angel. And I was like, oh, that is the sweetest thing at that point that any boy had ever said to me, I think. That was just absolutely precious. And I thought, oh, I love this boy. He and I are going to be married and live happily ever after. And he said, so this other thing I've got to tell you is something that, is super confidential. And I was like, we don't have to keep our love a secret, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, I wonder if he's worried. And all of these thoughts were happening in this very small span of time within a few seconds. I remember thinking, we don't have to keep our love a secret, our love. And I was wondering where he was going with this. And he goes, well, you're like one of my best friends. And I went, ugh, no girl wants to hear that. So he said, so I know I can trust you with this. And I was like, where is he going with this? And he goes, I have been in love with your best friend, Stephanie, for about 2 years. And my heart dropped through the floor of the car onto the ground. And my reaction was, oh, are you serious? You're in love with Stephanie? That's fantastic. You guys would make a great couple. Put on a happy face, hide the heartbreak, hide every feeling of emotion and heartbreak and trauma and just fear and panic and everything that I was just feeling. And smile and nod. So that's one indicator that you come from this type of a situation where your father made you feel so bad about yourself that you stifle your emotions and don't communicate because you're afraid to. You don't feel like you can when you're in a situation with a boy. And you have a feeling of panic and you just smile. Even later, when you are reliving the moment or moments with the boy and you're going, I do think I read those signals right. I do think that I was feeling something. And get this, in the moment, I was smiling and going, oh yeah, you should let Stephanie know how you feel. You should take her out, blah, blah, blah. And I was high-fiving him and cheering him on, all the while going through everything in my head. Like, he had given me a gold watch for Christmas. He had written me several poems. He had taken me over to his house, given me rides, bought me dinner. And one time, when we were at the library as friends, I was waiting for a ride and I was getting so impatient. We were leaning up against the wall. He was standing in front of me and I was leaning up against the wall, and I laid my head back like this against the wall and went, what is taking so long? And he went like this on my throat and ran his hand down my throat. As a teenage girl who had no intimate relations with any boy by the time I was a senior, I pulled my head away from the wall and looked at him like, what was that? And this was before he told me he was in love with my friend Stephanie. So talk about mixed signals. So this was another symptom that I wanted to share with you. When you're getting mixed signals from boys as a young woman, or even as a grown woman, A boy who wants you, a man who wants you, will not give you mixed signals. You will not be questioning what is going on. You will not wonder what the status of your relationship is. And he certainly won't tell you, after doing all that crap, that he's in love and has been in love with your best friend. That broke my heart. And then, Chad never called me and I had to get over him. So my senior year in high school, I had both Christian and Chad break my heart. And I was devastated. All I could focus on as a senior in high school, launching off to college, which was going to be the resolution to all of the problems I'd had in high school with friends, with my parents, with boys. Moving out of my parents' house and moving 3 hours away to university was going to solve all my problems. And that's how I graduated from high school. And that's where we're going to wrap this video, number 6 in the series on boys. I sure hope you guys are finding this information relevant. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys are doing well and taking care of yourself and making sure that you're making yourself a priority, taking care of yourself, not settling for second best, and knowing your worth. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.